Hello, hello. We are going to talk about page 22 in the homework. It looks something like this. So in class, we did example 1 and we did example 2. So for whatever reason, they put example 2 here. So I'm going to start here with these questions. These all go with example 1. So kind of working in your notes. Also, maybe if you have a textbook or a textbook online, kind of looking at what they did here. So we noticed they used this formula. They took the two x values and added them, then divided by 2 to get the x value. They took the two y values and added them, divided by 2 to get the y value. So again, let's just make sure this makes sense. They took the x value, -3, and the other x value, +4, and see how they added those two values together. And then they divided it in 2. Because again, we're trying to find the middle, so that should make sense. You would divide that in 2. Then the y values, they did the same thing. They just took the two y values, 2 and -2, added those up, and divided by 2. That's how we're going to do it. So let's give it a try with our new examples. Some students like to maybe put the formula here. That's helpful. Don't really have to do that. Another tip, some students like to put parentheses around that top part too, because again, I got to make sure I take both of those values and add them. Okay, so let's give it a try. So these two x values, I need to add together. So x value 3 and the x value -2. I'm going to add them together and then divide by 2. So the midpoint would equal, if we added the two x values, 3 and a -2, and then I need to divide by 2. So again, I need to make sure that I do the top part together because all of that is on the top. So you kind of think of this, separating that, you got to do that part first, almost like this idea of PEMDAS. Anything that separates things, you got to do first, whether it's a parentheses or not. Okay, so let's take a look on the calculator. 3 plus a -2 is 1. So this is going to be 1/2, also known as 1/2. I'm totally okay with you putting a decimal as well. So some of you may have put that. Now let's look at the y values. So the y values, I'm going to add 5 and 13. Some students like to stop highlighting. Other students are like, yeah, I like to keep highlighting. So the y values are 5 and 13. So I'm going to add them up and divide by 2. So the y value is 5 and 13. Add them up and divide by 2. So 5 and 13 would be 18, and half of 18 should be 9. Okay, hope that's right. Okay. Let me just double check in my calculator. 5 plus 13 is 18. Yep, divide by 2 is 9. Beautiful. So there's my midpoint. And again, you're free to go ahead and graph this, kind of like up here, graph one point, and see if your answer really does fall in the middle. That's a way to be sure, or at least sure that you made a little mistake in here. Next one. I got my two x values, so I'm going to add the two x values. So I got a -2 and a +1.4. So the midpoint would be -2 plus a +1.4, and then I'm going to divide by 2. Okay, so a -2 plus a +1.4 is a -0.6. But I'm going to divide that by 2. So let's go ahead and it's already in my calculator. I'm going to divide that by 2. Oops, I hit a 3. So I'm going to start over. -2 plus 1.4 is -0.6. I'm going to divide by 2. Okay, -0.3. Beautiful. Now I'm going to do it with my y values. So add my two y values and then divide by 2. So my y value 2.5, y value 4, and then divide by 2. So 2.5 plus 4 is 6.5. And again, because I want to find the midpoint, I'm going to divide that by 2. 3.25. Okay, so that's my x and y coordinate. Feel free to graph it and double check that it falls in the middle. Last one. Okay, so this one, ooh, decimals. Gonna get a little ugly, but we'll just keep on going about our business. Same steps. Add up our two x values, 4 1/3, -2 1/5. So 4 1/3 plus a -2 1/5. And then, oh boy, whatever I figure out what that is, I'm going to divide that by 2. So 4 1/3, 4, and, so that's plus 1 divided by 3, enter. Yeah, that's the decimal 4 1/3. Okay? So some students might want to write that down. You could write it down like that, because again, mathematicians are lazy, so we're like, I'm just going to write it like that instead of write all those 3's. And then plus a negative. So that's kind of the same as subtracting, but it doesn't matter either way. But let's figure out what 2 1/5 is. So 2 plus 1/5 is 2.2. Okay, so I'm going to do 4.3 repeating plus a -2.2. Okay, so let's just recap. 4 1/3 is the same as this decimal. 2 1/5 is that. So let's start over again. Okay, so we have 4 1/3. Yep, okay. And then plus a -2.2. We get 2.1333. But I'm not done, because remember, once I combine them, I want to divide by 2. So I'm going to combine them and go ahead and divide by 2. So divide by 2, I get 1.06 repeating. So you could put 1.1, 1.0. So I'm going to put 1.06 repeating. Awesome. So about 1. And if you graph this and you guessed 1, I'd take that too, because that number is really close to 1. Now let's look at our y values. So we have 3 1/6 and 3 2/3. So now to create the y coordinate, we add the y values, and then we divide by 2. So 3 1/6 plus 3 2/3. Now some of you know how to combine these fractions, and you can totally do that too. I'm just going to turn them into decimals. Lots of ways to do this. Feel free to ask me more ways or to confirm the way you did it. But okay, so 3 1/6 is 3.16 repeating. Okay, so 3.16 repeating, and then I'm going to add that to 3 2/3. Okay, so 3 2/3, 3.6 repeating. Let me just double check that. 3 2/3, yeah, 3.6 repeating. So I'm going to add this to 3.6 repeating. So if you don't want to type all this in, you can type it out like this, and you should be good. But again, don't forget, we're trying to find the midpoint, so we're going to divide by 2 once we figure out what that is. So adding the two y values, 3.16666, whole bunch of 6's, plus 3.666666, hit enter. Okay, so 6.83 repeating. Looks like 6.83 repeating. But I don't want to write that down. Remember, I got to divide that by 2. So if I divide it by 2, I get the quantity 3.426 repeating. If you wanted to just say 3.4 or 3.5 even, I would have taken that as well. That's about the middle, but that's a really precise answer, so that's cool too. Awesome. Okay, so we're halfway through our homework. The other example we did in class was example 2. So let's take a minute, again, just side by side here. I got an example 2, and these go with examples 2. So here, I'm finding the distance, and I think in class I used the method of the drawing. Now I think in the video, I'm going to use the method that they use. So let's see if we can make sense of this. They said to find 3/5 of the way. We could eyeball it. You know, that's 1/5, 2/5, 3/5, 4/5, 5/5. That's about 3/5 of the way. But you could use math to find the precise coordinate. So let's see how they did that. it looks like they first found the horizontal distance between the two x values. So the distance between 13 and 3, they just subtracted. We did that at the beginning of the year. To find the distance between two numbers, you can take right minus left, absolute value. Okay? Then they multiplied by the fraction they're looking for. Then it looks like they did it the same in the vertical. They took right minus left, the y values, 11 minus a negative 4. See how that's what they did? And then they multiplied 3/5. So they want to know this whole distance, and then they just want to know 3/5 of that distance. I think that's what we did eyeballing it. This is just doing it with numbers instead of with pictures. Okay, so let's give that a try. So it says first, we want 3/10 of the way there. So I'm thinking if that's halfway there, maybe somewhere around here, and I would totally accept that. But I also want to practice the math. Okay, so I want to say, what's the distance between the x values? So right minus left, absolute value. So, and then I don't want the whole distance, I want 3/10 of the distance. So I want 3/10 of the horizontal distance, horizontal's x, so I want 3/10 of right minus left, and it looks like that's going to be, and I want absolute value, that's going to be positive anyway. Okay, so I want, what's 3/10 of 12 plus 4? Well, that would be 16. So in my calculator, 3 divided by 10, enter, times 16, enter, 4.8. So that is 3/10 of 16. 3/10 of 16 is 4.8.